Welcome to another episode of the Wednesday Conversation. I'm Pastor Dusty, and I'm here with Pastor Bob Thune at Coram Church and Pastor Chris Hemmelman of First City Church. On Wednesdays, we sit down to talk about how the gospel of Jesus Christ connects to the questions and issues of everyday life. And today, we're talking about angels, demons, and AI.
How about that? Hey, and we're doing it without snacks, and we just need to rebuke some listeners and say, hey, come on. It's a new year.
These Ricola cough drops just aren't cutting it for snacks.
Cough drops are the snack today.
I bet if Bethany came back, we'd get a lot more snacks.
Yeah, come on, listeners. Hey, this is an article. We're going to talk about an article from the Public Discourse, which is a journal of the Witherspoon Institute. This particular article is by Dhananjay Jagannathan, who's a professor at Columbia University. Here's why this article stood out to me. I sent this to the guys because I have been wanting something that helps us think about AI. And I'm convinced that Christian theology has something to say here. And here was an article where this person is using the Christian theology of angels and demons to say something meaningful about AI. And I was like, that's what I'm looking for, because here's what's happening in my life. I'm sure it's happening in yours as well, right? All the hype in the world right now is about AI. AI is going to change the world. It's going to change everything. You know, it's going to make our lives totally different. I don't buy any of it. I am a huge AI skeptic. I think, cool, AI is going to continue to improve, and it's going to make certain changes, but the huge, preposterous things that are being said about AI, I'm just like, none of that is actually going to happen.
Yeah, I agree.
And this author, too, is skeptical of the claims that are made for AI. And what he does here, I think, is interesting for Christians to think about. So I'm going to try to summarize it. This is a philosophically complicated article. This person has good understanding of ancient philosophy, and so is doing some work here. I'm going to try to distill it down for listeners. But the simplest way to say it is that most modern thinking works with what you would call a mechanical model of intelligence. And all the AI people are sort of into this in the same way. In other words, basically, they think of your brain as just like a kind of a computer. You know, like what your brain does, it just synthesizes information and spits out, you know, it does the same kind of thing that a computer does. So when they think of a human brain and they think of a computer, they think of two very like things. You know, maybe human brains are still more advanced and more intelligent than computers are, but not for long, because if we just keep investing in the AI infrastructure, eventually AI is going to be able to do what humans can do. And that's all built on a mechanical model of the mind that says the mind is basically an input-output device. The mind takes data from the world, it processes it, and then it does something with it. This author says, actually, Thomas Aquinas helps us explode that understanding of mind. Or to say it another way, Christianity has a different concept of what the mind is than modern thinking does. And what this author does is he walks through Aquinas' understanding of angels and demons as a way of helping us understand where the biblical conception, or at least the Christian theological tradition, has some resources that the modern tradition doesn't have. So to be clear here, he's not doing biblical exegesis. He's basically using Aquinas. And what's interesting about Aquinas is a figure who is knowledgeable in the scriptures, but also leans heavily on Plato and Aristotle and the Greek philosophical tradition. And so Aquinas sort of synthesizes these two worlds, takes Greek philosophy and biblical reasoning and kind of brings them together in some interesting ways. And so what I want to do is just quickly summarize how this author understands, how he helps us use Aquinas as a conversation partner for thinking about what does the mind do, okay? And so the question to ask yourself as you listen is, how is an angel's intelligence different from my intelligence, from a human being's intelligence? So what Aquinas acknowledged is that there are two kinds of beings. There are material beings and there are spiritual beings. And human beings obviously are material but with a soul. Angels are purely spiritual beings. And so he says, like us, angels are finite created beings who play a discrete role in God's providential arrangement of the world. But unlike us, they are free of material limitation. So basically what he says, if you want to think of it, an angel is an immaterial intelligence. They are intelligent creatures like human beings, but immaterial. And then he says, if you think about how is their understanding, how is an angel's thought different from my thought? How's an angel's intellect different? This is what Aquinas says. He says that angels understand the nature of things immediately from the moment of their creation. They do not come to understanding. They are created with immediate understanding of the world. Our intelligence is what's called discursive, meaning we grow in our knowledge by coming to terms with what's in the world and reflecting on it. The language he uses is this: angelic intelligence is intuitive. It's all at once, it's complete, it's immediate. Our intelligence is discursive. So think about the word discourse. It's talking back and forth and coming to understanding. And Aquinas is working here with Aristotle's theory of the mind, which is that our minds, when we understand something, we take data from the external world, but then our minds are also doing something with it. The simplest way for me to explain this is to use his example. Think about an individual horse. Maybe it's a horse you rode as a kid. Maybe it's a horse you've read about in literature or seen on TV. Think about a Secretariat, a famous racehorse. When you are thinking about a horse, you're both thinking about the individual horse that you have experienced, but you're also understanding the nature of horseness. There's a sense in which you understand that that's not the only horse in the world. You generalize from that horse and understand the category of things called horses. In other words, your mind is able to do both. It's able to look at a particular horse and then also to sort of generalize about horses in general, okay? And he describes this as the mind actively making contact with reality. Your mind is connecting with reality and making contact with it and understanding it discursively. So intelligence...
Before you go on that, talk to us about why that's different than an angel.
Okay, so he would just say an angel's intelligence doesn't require it to engage the external world with the goal of learning. So I guess the simplest way to say, he doesn't use this language, but the simplest way to say it is we learn and come to conclusions about things. Angels just know.
And that brings about change for us.
Right.
And so angels don't need to change.
Right.
Yeah, got it.
What do you think of that? Just as an idea. Because Aquinas is working with multiple strains of understanding here, but
yes,
I don't necessarily know if this is, can you exegete that from the scripture?
No, I don't think you can.
Yeah.
I think Aquinas is doing sort of theological reasoning here.
Yeah.
It'd be hard pressed to say, show me a Bible verse that says angels know things immediately.
Yeah.
But what one thing he interestingly sort of reflects on is every time you see an angel in the Bible, they do seem to have knowledge of reality that they're bringing to humans. Mm-hmm. God's sending them as messengers and saying, go tell Mary that she's going to be with child, or, go give Daniel the interpretation of this dream. They do seem to come with understanding. And the question is, how did they get that understanding?
Yeah. 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 I have no serious reason to disagree with this. I guess I think it's fascinating. I just wrestle with, is there another option to explain the knowledge of the type of intelligence an angel possesses? Is it sort of this all at once intuitive thing, or is it learning? Is there kind of degrees of those things? So that's just, again, not necessarily germane to the point, but
yeah, I think those are
just kind of wrestling through as an idea. I was like, this is kind of a fascinating thing. I need to read some more Aquinas.
No, those are the right questions. So to think about now how human intelligence is, to use his word, discursive, right? How we come to understand the world, and our theology of mind says that our mind helps make sense of or make contact with reality. So when he uses the language of reality, and again, there's some philosophical background here, but when we talk about reality, keep in mind we're talking about the material world and the immaterial world, right? So think about, for instance, this is my example I use. Everybody can envision a unicorn. Does a unicorn exist in the material world?
In the King James Bible, they do.
Oh.
Sorry.
There it is.
We had to go there.
I had to go there.
Do you have that?
So your mind can conceive of a unicorn or of a dragon or, think of a mythical creature. Your mind can conceive of that because it can do the work of starting from things you've experienced in the world and then sort of imagining, right? This is a baseline human intelligence thing. We start with what we know in the world, and then we're capable. Or think of this: how would you say that you know the number one? The number one is what's called in philosophy a universal. In other words, you can't point me to the number one anywhere in the material world. You can't take me outside and show me, Bob, here's the number one. And yet every one of us and every child is able to understand the number one. We do it because we see that there's one Bible on the table in front of us and there's one microphone right here, and our minds are able to synthesize that and understand this universal idea called the number one. Numbers are the best explanation here of kind of how we get to this understanding of the mind, is just to say, what is a number? We all know what it is, but it doesn't exist in the physical world, right? So he says, because of this, the human discursive intelligence, he's saying artificial intelligence does not have that. Okay, so let me read from a couple of a couple paragraphs from the end of his article. Remember, he's wanting to challenge the computational model of the mind that just says basically your mind just takes inputs and spits out outputs. He says, actually, the theory that Aquinas develops presents us with an instructive alternative, mindedness as freedom from material limitation. So what's the connection between human intelligence and angelic intelligence? It's freedom from material limitation. What it means to have intelligence is we are able to think in ways that don't involve the material world. The first dimension of freedom belongs to the intellect, the capacity to understand not simply the particularities of the world that confront us, but to grasp any intelligible reality whatsoever. So think about the example I just used of the number one, right? That's not a particularity in the world, yet we're able to grasp it. It is intelligible to us. So we stand apart from the individual encounters with the world that we have, and yet we're making contact with the world that's really there. The number one is real, though it is not material. The second dimension of freedom belongs to the will, by which we can direct our intellectual lives and the rest of our lives. He says there's no such thing as a mind without a will. Mindedness is a form of responsiveness. We set goals, we build schedules, we say tomorrow I'm going to do such and such. Your dog doesn't do that. Your dog just lives on instinct. I always joke about people's dogs because I'm just like, you know what? Your dog is a sentient being, but doesn't have the same intellect that you have and that the angels have. Why? Because your dog doesn't purpose about things, right? Your dog lives an instinctive life. We have purposes and plans, and that's an aspect of having a mind. Now, here's the key. So those two freedoms: one, the freedom to understand not just the material world, but universals. And second, the freedom to purpose and plan and strategize. He says, artificial intelligence has neither kind of freedom. AI is not capable of discursive thought. It does not aim to grasp the world at all. Rather, it merely synthesizes our representations. And also, it's not capable of having a purpose unless a programmer gives it one. So the two things AI can't do is it can't grasp non-material reality, it can't abstract about universals, and it can't come up with plans and purposes and that kind of thing. And so because AI can do neither of those things, it's not intelligent in the way that humans are, and in the way that angelic beings are, and in the way that demons are. There's a whole aspect of what we call intelligence that a machine does not have, cannot have, and will never have.
And that's where, as much as I love this article, but that cannot and will not.
You're not convinced. You just think we need to keep programming.
Well, no, I don't think he goes far enough to explain why not.
Okay.
Sure.
Like he points out that is the case, but I think he leaves it a little bit, not that he would disagree with you, but I think he leaves the explanation a little bit hanging as to, because isn't this what all the AI designers aspire to, is like, hey, if we keep working in this direction, at some point it's going to be able to do that. They'd say, yeah, right now it can't, but someday it could.
Yes, of course, that's what they would say.
Yeah. But,
because they're working with a computational theory of mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is it ontologically, to use another big word, about
Dang,
AI
we're in the weeds.
that will always keep it from getting there?
Well, I think I have an answer. I'll be curious.
I'm sure your answer will be what my answer is too. But I think that's where I was like, I wish he would have taken this article just a little bit further. But I don't know. I don't know his faith background, if this is even registering for him. But it felt like there was just this one piece here that it was like, hey, tell me why it will never get there.
Yeah. My simple answer is because it is not intelligent. because it's not an intelligence. Intelligence is those two capacities, the capacity to grasp universals and the capacity to be purposive and come up with plans.
And what gives what ontologically gives an intelligence that capacity?
I would say
embodiment.
I would say it's being created by a God who gave us those capacities.
Yeah. So that's where the piece of what is distinct about the being of a human being and an angel and how we were created, whether you want to call it the soul, you kind of get into those categories. Does an angel have a soul? Well, I mean, in the sense of they're different than humans, but there's something soulful there for,
Yes.
We're not going to be super precise here, but that aspect of our being that I think that an AI will never have, therefore will never get to what you're saying.
Right.
Is it too simple to say that all AI can do is scrub and borrow other intelligence?
Yeah, I think all it can do is run computations.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, what a computer, the reason it is called a computer is because it computes. It does math. It runs programs that human beings tell it to run. No matter how much that programming gets complex and sort of interesting, it is always going to be running a program that a human designer gave it. And yes, there are, the mystical AI people are like, oh, it's going to make this leap to quantum intelligence where it starts to think on its own. And what I'm telling you is our theological tradition gives us a reason to say, not only is that never going to happen, it actually can't happen.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
It's not even, they're not even working with the right categories of what intelligence even is or could be. And so let me read you his conclusion and then we can reflect on it. He says, not only do I remain an AI skeptic in the sense of thinking that the technology in its present guise offers only a simulacrum of intelligence, I am also skeptical that the industry is on a path to taking genuine responsibility for its effects. He basically says the problem is the industry's not also going to take responsibility for what this push is going to do to us. It's not going to get there, but when it doesn't get there, no one's going to turn around and say, well, I want to take responsibility for all the money we wasted on this, or all the ways that it all the ways that it dehumanized the world that we live in and tried to replace humans with machines.
Yeah. Is another way to kind of look at this too is AI has no capacity for genuine affection.
Oh, for sure.
Like love, hate, longing, those kinds of things that are also part of, being created by God, who has given us these capacities.
But what I like what you're saying though, I think a critic or a skeptic would just say, well, yeah, but I'm just talking, that's not what we're after. We're after just intelligence. We're not after affection. We're never saying these computers are going to become human in those ways of having emotions and affections. What I like about this article is he's questioning, does the word intelligence even mean what you think it means? Because I think an AI person would say, yeah, Chris, we're not trying to give it a soul. We're not trying to make it love you. We're just trying to build an intelligent machine that can replace humans in some ways.
Yeah. No, and that makes sense. I guess the thing that I wrestle with in that is, this kind of that quantum leap sort of thing that you were talking about, that mystical sort of thing that
every good sci-fi movie is based on.
Yeah. That in some ways, for that to be possible, wouldn't that have to come with it? And if, I don't know enough about AI to maybe it is no, that's not a necessary piece, but it would seem to me that if you're going to make kind of that leap into sort of the mystical where it's thinking for itself and actually achieve sort of sentient, that would have to be part of it. Otherwise, it's not really fully sentient in the sense too. So I don't know. This is interesting though. All the sci-fi movies, I, Robot, and Minority Report, all the movies that are about what if robots make this leap, to like be human-like. The thing they're always playing with are the universals: love, justice, altruism, sacrifice. Is a robotic being, is an artificial intelligence capable of understanding these kinds of things? And depending on where the movie's going, they either convince you that it is, and this robot really does have like a loving capacity, or it's not, and it becomes very, anti-human and anti-social.
Terminator. Right.
But Terminator's good till he's bad.
Yeah. Right. But the point is they're all playing with, if you think about what these movies are doing, they're all playing with this question of can a created intelligence built by humans make the jump to understanding universals, love, not just numbers, but love, justice, kindness, altruism. These are universals in the sense that you can't point to them in the world anywhere. You can just abstract them out of the world. This is a kind person. This person loves me, and I know what love is because I've experienced the love of human beings, and in some way my mind is able to abstract about the nature of something called love. So that's, the movies are all playing with the question you're asking, which is like, if they can ever cross the boundary where they get to, I would say all those things are sort of downstream from that capacity to have a kind of intelligence. Because again, if we think about angels and demons, right? Angels love God and are faithful to him. Demons are angelic beings that have turned, right, and decided to rebel against God. So angels and demons are capable of love and loyalty and hatred and unfaithfulness as well, as are humans, right? But machines aren't. Machines don't do that kind of a thing.
Nor can they, which is to his example in here, that ChatGPT can't really write you a letter.
Yeah, that's we need to read that part.
It can, well, he basically says like, it absolutely can provide you text.
Yeah.
But to write a letter is to take a journey.
Yeah, I want to read that. Let me read that quote. ChatGPT cannot really write a letter, Chris. ChatGPT guy.
Push back.
Or a sermon.
To be sure, it can compose a text that resembles a letter much more quickly than any of us can, but to write a letter is to take a certain kind of journey, to choose and continue to choose one's words reflectively, to subtly alter one's course in the middle of the way as one sees more and better the terrain that lies ahead, and to choose an apt stopping point that is typically just the middle of a longer correspondence or simply the point that one runs out of ink or writing paper. It may take a moment for an LLM-powered chatbot to summon the computational resources to deliver a complete answer, but there's nothing truly discursive in what it does. I like that. To write a letter is to take a certain kind of journey.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Yeah.
An example of that is we recently played some pickleball, and Justin said, hey, on such and such date, I'm going to post the rules to pickleball. And as soon as he did, everybody knew that it was ChatGPT because every single person getting the message knows Justin Curtis.
Yep.
And they knew that his personality was not in these rules. It wasn't like, hey guys, let me give you the rules real quick. Let me tell them to you. It was absolutely scrubbed from the internet, right?
Yeah.
So you just know because there's no person to it. There's no personality behind it.
Yep.
The article that he references, the kind of where he draws that point from, I read that article. It's a letter to his students, but it's an essay.
Okay.
Actually, really, really good. I sent it to Mindy. It's like, hey, you should read this and glean some of this with your students, because of I think he captures actually the beauty of the creative process, like the fact that this is something that is uniquely human in what we're doing and how you think about writing and words and language and like learning in the process. And so I thought it was just he kind of taps into there's something distinct and unique about human intelligence. And yeah, maybe we can't, fire off something in a split second like ChatGPT, but what is produced because it is human and the process that takes place is richer, it's deeper because it's intelligent. and carries the marks of intelligence and all the, the exercising of the will, the abstraction, like all that stuff, that when something is marked by that, just the superiority of it versus pulling something off ChatGPT, rules off ChatGPT.
I heard Ben Sass say one time, we can't mistake, we have to let our tools be tools. He was talking about smartphones. You're just like, hey, this is a tool. To the extent that it helps you extend your humanity in a meaningful way, great, let it. But never confuse it as anything other than a tool.
Yeah. And
I think that's what AI needs to be understood as well. I think AI is a tool that might be able to do really profound things for advancement and for, especially in various industries where innovation is required. I think it could be a really useful tool. What's ridiculous and what I think Christians need to be very skeptical of is all the claims that are being made about how AI is going to change the world. I just think at the end of the day, AI is going to be a billions and billions of dollars invested in a pretty neat machine. It's going to be like you got a Ferrari in the driveway and it's cool and it goes fast, but it's still at the end of the day just a vehicle for getting you down to the grocery store and back. Yeah. It's not changing your life. It's not going to replace humans in any meaningful way other than in ways of efficiency, where you can get more work done faster. But it is not actually intelligent. And I just want to go on record as saying, and it's never going to be. And if you want to argue, I'd love to hear from you at the podcast at cdomaha.com, because I'm sure there's some people out there that are like, no, man, AI is really going to become intelligent, and it's really going to change us in ways we don't even see.
You're going to have to argue with Bob and Aquinas.
That's right.
Good luck with that.
I'm in good company, baby. Also, my favorite thing about Aquinas is at the end of his life, he's one of the most intelligent people in history. At the end of his life, he had some mystical encounter with God, and he stopped writing and just said, everything I've written is meaningless in light of communion with God.
Wow.
And I just like a guy that's just like one of the smartest guys ever, and he just has an experience of communion with God, and he's like, yeah, this is better than everything I've ever written, and I can't even really do it justice in words. So that's the kind of life I want to live, man. It's like to experience God in communion with God in a way that makes me say, yeah, I can't really say anything meaningful compared to what my encounter with God was like. So yeah, if you disagree or if you want to talk more about AI, or if maybe you have some angles on this that we haven't tackled, we'd love to hear from you. I want to weigh in on the side of this author and say that, LLMs and artificial intelligence have neither of these kind of freedoms. They can't abstract to universals, and they can't create their own purposes. And because of that, I don't think they are intelligent. And I would love to hear from folks who maybe are more in this world working with these things every day. And if you have a Christian reflection on this or an interesting question that maybe we haven't surfaced yet that applies to the conversation, I hope you'll reach out. But I hope that this helps you see two things. One is it's okay to be a skeptic of AI. You don't have to buy the hype. And two is there are resources in our theological tradition that help us have meaningful conversations about these questions that everyone is asking. So I hope that this little journey into the thinking of Thomas Aquinas is at least instructive for you to show you the value of Christian theology applied to some hot questions in our culture and the ways that our tradition gives us meaningful ways of analyzing questions that people around us are asking that maybe they just don't have the conceptual tools to really get underneath. So we'll post the article from the Public Discourse along with this podcast in case you want to go read the article yourself. It's about 5 pages long. And again, requires a little bit of philosophical thinking, but I think you might find it helpful.
The goal of this podcast is to equip our own churches for discipleship and mission. So if you're a Christian or a church leader in another context, thanks for listening in. And we pray that this conversation might be helpful to you as you minister in your context. And hey, we always love to hear from listeners. So if you have thoughts, questions, future podcast topics, send an email to podcast@cdomaha.com. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time for another episode of the Wednesday Conversation.